Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode number 731 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. It is Wednesday, June 11th, 2025, and we are entering the fun part of June because as I stand here, I am Donald One. I'm your host for this episode. I have Jason Evans with me. Jason, it's time to start previewing the NBA draft. And because we have so many guys that are eligible to be drafted and we expect to be drafted, this is going to be a nice little couple weeks for us.
Yeah, man, there are a lot of Dukies. There are a
Yeah.
lot of Duke guys in the NBA draft. I know there are Duke fans out there. I'm not going to specifically call them out, but there's a friend of mine who just the other day said I hear these people like the Duke basketball report front page is all full of articles about where Duke guys are going to get drafted and how they're doing in the combine. He's like, I don't care about any of that stuff. Once they're gone, they're gone. Um, I get that. I respect that. I know there are those of you who are going to see the title of this episode and go, not really interested. I'm interested. We root for these guys so hard while they are at Duke. We we watch them develop over, even if it's over the course of just one season, or like in the case of a Tyrese Proctor, over the course of 3 seasons. And it's a ton of fun. Why would you not want to continue to track them when they're making money in the NBA? I mean, I still find it fascinating. My favorite players in the NBA, almost all of them are guys who are former Dukies. If you don't enjoy watching Jason Tatum, Paulo Banchero, and the rest of these guys, I mean, come on, what are you doing? And it is part of the lifeblood of this program. Let's be very, very clear. The reason Duke got Cooper Flagg, the reason Duke got Paulo Banchero, on Zion Williamson, on and on and on. We get these studs because we are great at sending guys to the pros. We're great at preparing them to be NBA stars. If you're not interested in how the Duke guys do in the draft, you're missing a big part of why guys come to Duke in the first place.
I'll just say it like this, Jason. You graduated from Duke. I graduated from Duke. I promise you, we didn't leave that in Durham when we left. I still
Exactly.
got my degree. We root for Duke just as hard, if not harder, than we did when we were in school. And it's the same with these players. And I'm not saying that you need to root for the Celtics, but I like to see Jason Tatum do well, and you like to see them do well at the next level.
Yeah, and by the way, Donald, you can tell everyone I'm wearing my Atlanta Hawks t-shirt today
Hmm.
as as we record this right now. I'm a big fan of the Hawks. I have season tickets that I share with a few other guys, so I go to a half dozen to a dozen Hawks games every year. Really good seats, by the way. Here's one of the problems, by the way. Sidetrack. One of the problems with being a Duke fan is you go to college at Duke, you sit, in the front row, first couple rows. I sat in the front row, every seat, every game, camped out first in line. But you get great seats to Duke games, and then you go live in New York and Los Angeles and Atlanta and Washington, all these other places, and you want to go see a basketball game, and your seats are in the rafters, and you're paying through the nose for them. And you're like, what's going? So, Duke fans, we are spoiled. But as a result, when it came time for me to get season tickets to the Atlanta Hawks, Donald, my season tickets are fifth row center court, baby. I've got the Cameron experience in Atlanta. They cost me a pretty penny, but they are great seats.
Look, this is one thing that has dissipated after leaving Duke. You can't walk into every building and be in the front row. That's something that we're able to do anymore. But I will say this, I have become a master of just getting in the building and then from there finding my way down to seats that might be a little bit better than the seat that's printed on my ticket. But the great thing, Jason, is because you're a Hawks fan, you get to see Jalen Johnson, but you also get to see all these Dukies come through. And so again, you get to relive that portion of kind of seeing them continue to grow beyond their time in Durham, which I think is great. I'm a Detroit Pistons fan, obviously, but also have the Wizards down the street. So I love to see when those guys come through because it's a great chance to watch, again, Duke extended. And that brotherhood, the fact that we have so many guys that we're able to watch is a blessing that I personally think that people should take advantage of if they have the opportunity. But we're going to add, hopefully, five more guys to that brotherhood that it is going to be in the NBA next year. We begin our preview of the NBA draft and kind of our draft analysis. Uh, Obviously, we can't do this alone, Jason. And as we've done in previous years, we've had some great guests on. And of course, Jay Bilas was kind enough to share his wisdom with us over basically the course of an hour long interview, which we are going to break up into several parts. We are going to obviously dedicate an episode over the next couple of weeks to each of the five guys, no burgers, players that are going to be in this NBA draft. So, Jason, before we get started with that, your thoughts on, again, once again, we have Jay Bilas on here. It's a great get for us. And I really appreciate the fact that he's always so willing to give up his time to give us insight that we could never, ever think of.
Yeah, this is about the third or fourth year in a row, I think, that he's done this for us. And it's worth noting, of course, Jay Billis is well known as a college basketball analyst, as ESPN's top college basketball analyst. But even beyond that, he is the guy that ESPN pays to be the analyst on their draft broadcast. When you watch the draft in a couple weeks to see where Cooper and Khan and Common and Tyrese and Sion go, the guy who's going to be telling you about those players, the guy who's going to be giving you the analysis of what their game is like, is Jay Billis. So for us to get him on this broadcast, on this podcast, and have him chat with us, you're right, it was an hour-long conversation about all these different players. You're getting some top-notch insight, and I'm just ready for folks to listen to it. Let's go, man.
Well, the other thing also is this year, as you well know, and folks out there who are listening probably do, he also has added. He obviously he was the number one analyst for college basketball. He's on College Game Day. He's on all the big broadcasts for college basketball, including a lot of Duke games. But now he has expanded. He is doing NBA games as well. So he's even added more of a perspective to how some of these guys would translate at the next level. So we're going to start our Jay Billis interview with first a couple of general draft thoughts about the overall draft class. This class being viewed as one of the deeper classes ever, and some considering it as good a class as any dating back to 2003 with the LeBron James class. But we also wanted to get his thoughts on what this draft class was like, some of the guys to watch out for. So there's that part of the interview, and then we then get into our first segment, which is Sion James, and obviously we talk about what he brings to the table, good, what he needs to improve on, what role he can kind of craft for himself, and then we ask him for an over under of the type of pick that you think he's going to be. We give a number for each of these guys, except for Cooper Flag, because there's only one number that he's going to have. We'll talk about him later. But for Sion James, we give an over under, and we ask Jay on each of these players to tell us where he thinks if he thinks he's going to get drafted before that number or after that number. So, without further ado, former Duke legend, current analyst for ESPN, Jay Billis, his thoughts on the general draft and also on Sion James.
All right, Jay, thanks a lot for joining us. We loved having you on. We love having you on every year at this time of year because no one dives into the draft the way you do. I've got a general question, few general questions about the draft that I want to start us with. What do you think of the quality of this draft class? Obviously, people have been talking, this is the Cooper Flag class, but how does the rest of the class compare to, some other recent ones that you've studied?
Better than last year. And I think it's really solid throughout the first round. It gets a little more difficult to assess in the second round. You've got a lot more players. I think we're seeing a shift now of sort of second round caliber talent or prospects, I should say. Most of them are going back to school because they can make more money there. And so we're not seeing as many players stay in the draft as did 5 years ago or so. And we're going to see a number of international players, I'm sure, in the second round. That may be a draft and stash type situation. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I think it could. But the first round is really, really solid, I think.
Jay, I know in previous years when people were looking at this particular class before the freshmen arrived, they kind of looked at this NBA draft as one of the deeper ones they were expecting it to be. Do you think that talk has leveled out? Is it the same? Has it diminished? Do people still think of this draft as one of the deeper drafts in recent memory?
It's awfully good. I haven't really sat down to say, okay, does this compare favorably to '03 or drafts like that? I do think there's a tremendous amount of value as you go throughout the first round. There are a number of I think rotational players that are 3 and D guys that have great length and defensive ability as you get to the end of the first round. There are some question marks and guys that have a lot of potential. But the top of the draft, I think, is really, really good. And I think we're going to see a number of outstanding players come out of the top third of the draft, third of the first round, maybe a little bit further through the lottery to the middle. There are a number of players you like, and then there are a few that you're saying, well, I really like what he does here. I'm questioning what he does there, things like that. But the league has become star driven in a lot of ways. But if you have an elite skill in a certain area where you can become a role player, and then if you're sort of a 3-point shooting, straight line driving, multiple position defender, you're going to play in the league for a long time.
That's for sure. Hey, Jay, give me, if you can, one guy that you think, conventional wisdom is this guy will go high, and I think I'm skeptical. And one guy that you think, you know what, people are thinking this guy may not be a first rounder, and I think he's definitely going to, give me a upside and downside surprise if you have one.
Well, there are a number of upside guys. I actually think Colin Murray Boyles of South Carolina is undervalued. He's kind of a middle of the first round guy. If you look at some of these projections, I think he's a top 10 player. Left-handed guy, really good defender. I mean, just sort of has a great feel defensively. And he played on what I consider to be the greatest last place team in the history of college basketball at South Carolina. I couldn't believe they were good, and they finished last in the Southeastern Conference, and they had a great record last year, but this year struggled in the best league in the country. I just think the draft kind of starts at number 3 this year, and what do you do with the third pick? I think Cooper Flagg's going to go 1 to Dallas. I would be shocked if Dallas traded that pick. There's some talk or speculation. It's not even talk, it's speculation that Dallas could trade it, but I don't think they will. And even though San Antonio needs shooting and they need a big guy to go alongside Victor Wembanyama, I still think they're going to take Dylan Harper of Rutgers, even though they've got some players that are similar to him already. But the question is going to be, do you take Ace Bailey and VJ Edgecombe number 3? And there may be some other players you may like there, but I think it's probably going to come down to Edgecombe and Bailey.
So there are going to be 5 Dukies in all likelihood taken in this draft, everybody from the starting class. What's some perspective on that? Your general thoughts of it? It's unusual to say the least, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's happened before, certainly. I mean, you've had teams that had 5 players taken in the first round. Kentucky's done that. So it's not unprecedented. But, when you got, Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple and Kaman Malawach, all those guys are going to go in the top 10, I think. I don't see any of them slipping below that. And then, I think Sion James has proven that he can guard at that level, and with his athleticism and strength and his playmaking ability, I think he's going to be a solid second round pick. I don't know exactly where because things get a little dicey in the second round. And Tyrese Proctor, I thought early on was going to be a first round pick. He may not be taken in the first round this year, but he may be. He's still a really good prospect. But I think things have changed a little bit. Like one thing about Tyrese is his body hasn't changed yet, which was a little surprising to me. I thought his body would mature a little bit more, but it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things whether you're taking 20 25th or 35th. I mean, I think Draymond Green kind of proved that.
So Jay, obviously 5 guys that potentially could be drafted by in the NBA. We're going to start in the reverse order of who we think will be drafted, and we'll start with Sion James, and we want to talk about him for a minute. First off, when you think of Sion James and from what you've heard, what do you think the NBA likes when they see him on the court?
He's plug and play. So he's got a great deal of maturity. He's a team guy, so you can, he would come in and in all likelihood be a rotation player. And he checks most every box of being able to do everything out on the floor. Nobody's going to draft him to be, a leading scorer of a team, but that's not why he would be drafted. He's going to help you win. He's really good defensively. He's got really good hands. He's smart. He can initiate offense. Good passer, low error rate. Can make an open shot. I wouldn't say that he's a primary scorer type, but that's not why he would be drafted. So there's a lot to like about his ability to blend in on a roster and come into a game and help you win.
And on the flip side, obviously, you've talked about some of the qualities, but what do you think are some of the things he would need to improve on at the next level?
Well, I mean, you can always become more efficient. And I mean, when I was younger, and that's saying something, it's a long time ago to say when I was younger, but when guys stayed around because they didn't have a choice, um, a 22-year-old coming in was a rookie that had a lot to learn. Now you see a 22-year-old and you say, well, he's hit his ceiling. Well, I don't think that's true. Um, there's for all these guys, there's a long way to go. But I think the floor is pretty well established for Sion James. It's just a question of how high the ceiling's going to be in the NBA.
Jay, how much do you think, or I should say, did you think Sion boosted his NBA stock by his 1 year at Duke? I mean, what did he show playing with other guys who project as future NBA players versus what the NBA sort of saw from him at Tulane?
Yeah, I think at Tulane, he was more of expected to be a primary scorer, but he was a guy that came in and was a really important piece to a championship level team at Duke. And there were certain games that he could, he had really good games where he scored a little bit more, and other games where he came in and did what it took. And so he's one of those make the right play guys. He's low maintenance, and I think a lot of people get fooled that the NBA, you gotta be compared to star level performers in that league, and there are a lot of different spots that can have a long career that come in, and he may go games where he's a DNP. He may go 10 games in a row where he's a DNP, but maybe 20. But then he can come in and he's one of those guys that I think will be ready in any situation because of his maturity level.
What do you think about Sion's role and position in the NBA? Because at Duke, he was kind of playing point guard, although, Duke was mostly having Con Knipple, Cooper Flagg initiate the offense. It wasn't a traditional point guard kind of role, although defensively, he was just dynamic guarding the opposing team's best perimeter player. What's his role in the NBA? He's not going to be an NBA point guard, right?
Well, I mean, there aren't that many true NBA point guards. In a lot of ways, it's a pass ahead league and it's a rip and run league anyway. So there are so many versatile talents in the league. But he's a guy that if he does grab a rebound, he can bring it up himself, and he does handle it. So, but yeah, he's not going to be a primary point guard, and I don't know that he'll be a starter. I'm not saying he won't be, but I'm not sure that's why he's going to be drafted. So I think the fact that you can plug him into a lot of different spots, and the fact that he is a really good defender, and can guard multiple positions, he can switch, he can pressure the ball, he's tough. I think that speaks really well of him, and the low maintenance part is important. He's not going to be drafted to come in and lead the way. He's going to be drafted to come in and do what it takes. And I do think he showed that mindset at Duke. He wasn't a player at first that I think everybody thought was going to start or play a ton of minutes. And then through the course of the season, he showed himself to be kind of an indispensable team guy. that the team performed better when he was on the floor.
All right, last thing we have, and we're going to do this with each one of the Duke guys. I want to play a little over under game with you. Spot is number 45. You think Sion James goes over or under? Does he get picked before 45 or after 45? Or did I nail it perfectly? Do you think 45 is his spot?
You nailed the range. I've got him right around 41 or 42. I can't remember exactly what, but he's in the 40s for me, the low 40s. So I would say he'll be taken before 45. But the second round's really hard to predict.
Sure.
If you need a shooter, maybe take Kobe Bray of Kentucky over him. You need a defender, you're going to take Sion James over Kobe Bray, stuff like that.
All right, we are back, and of course, we thank Jay for all the time that he's given, and of course, we're going to be hearing more about some of these other players down the line. But Jason, I want to start before we get to Sion James. I want to start with just the overall draft, and I think when you look at this draft, he mentioned that the draft really starts at number three, and the fact that everyone thinks that Cooper Flag is going to be number one and Dylan Harper is going to be number two to the Spurs. After that is kind of a toss up, and I think one thing that he mentioned that was interesting to me was in the case of Sion James, where he could land depends on the draft and stash internationals. And that's something that kind of ebbs and flows from year to year. And I wonder how many are going to be involved this year, given that NIL has forced a lot of the underclassmen to withdraw from the draft, but also some of these internationals like Dame Sarr, who could have gone straight to the league, are now coming to college instead to kind of give another path to them. So, your thoughts first of all on what he said about the draft, and then we can kind of ease that into his particular focus on Sion James.
Well, I mean, it is interesting that this year there are going to be fewer guys, fewer underclassmen, I should say, fewer players who don't have, or sorry, who do have eligibility left in this draft than we've seen in a decade. And it's because of NIL, because these guys can go back to school and make big money in school. They're just a lot fewer guys who are like, oh, I'm going to risk it in the second round. And as a result of that, you're going to see two things. First one is more upperclassmen, more juniors and seniors, especially seniors, are going to be drafted in this draft than we usually see because the younger guys are like, I can make good money back in college. The other thing you're going to see is, as Jay alluded to, I think you're going to see a pretty fair number of international players. And you're right that a number of them have chosen to come to college basketball, but most Damasar is an unusual one. Most of the
Right.
guys who have elected to come play college ball rather than playing in Europe are not 18 and 19. They're not guys who are sort of newly draft eligible. They're guys who've kind of been around a little while, and they're going to be good players in college basketball, but these are not guys who are seen as having a big NBA future. But I still think you're going to see those foreign names taken in the second round by a lot of teams. And then the last thing about the draft, just in terms of the general thoughts on it, I think this is one of the least predictable drafts we've seen in a long, long time after 1 and 2. Everyone knows Cooper Flagg's going number one. The consensus is Dylan Harper's going number two. Now, I'm not sure if I was a GM, I would draft him number two. I've got some real questions about Dylan Harper, but that's what the consensus is. But after that, I can make a case for probably 8 other guys to go number three. I mean, it is really wide open. And there are guys like, if you tell me that Derek Queen gets taken, 7th or 8th, I'm not going to be that surprised. If you tell me that Derek Queen somehow lasts till 15th or 16th, I'm not going to be that surprised. Like, there's just a wide range on a lot of these guys, and it's not because they are unknown players. In my opinion, it is because this is a very, very deep class of guys who have accomplished a pretty fair bit. And so you're like, is this exactly, if you're a team, is this exactly what I need? Because what I need is probably out there. I just see a ton of guys who can do a lot of different things. And like, if you're a team and you're like, oh, I need a center, but there isn't a center. They're centers. Oh, I need a point guard. They're point guards. This draft to me has a lot of everything, and that's what makes it so hard to project who's going to go where.
I think also the fact that you have guys who can They can shoot, they can play defense, they can maybe slash, drive, some of those qualities that the NBA really loves, but may not be the prototypical size for a particular position. So they fall into that tweener category. And I think this is where the NBA kind of gets judgmental and fans by proxy do as well, where they kind of go, oh, this guy can shoot. He can do it all. We've seen him do it in college. But, he's like 6'4", 210, right? And so then they figure it's almost like they find a way to knock them down a couple of spots to kind of get them down into a level where they think that they're, you know, they're approachable. And in the case of Sion James, I wonder, one, like, how are they going to? You talked about the fact that a lot more upperclassmen are going to be in this draft. It could get drafted, but what the stigma has always been: if you were a junior or senior, there must be something wrong with you, right? And so now, what the question I have is how much is that going to outweigh? If there is a case between Sion James and a guy who's a freshman or sophomore that is still in the draft, who are they going to go for? Are they still going to go for the upside? Or are they at a point in the draft in the 40s? Are they going for more proven commodities? I think when it comes to Sion James, the best part about his game is that we learned last year that it is so adaptable to the situation. He was right. He was not supposed to be a starter when he came to Duke. The famous question that John Shire answered correctly was, "Hey, if I actually I know I'm not here to be a starter, but if I outperform some of these guys, will I get that opportunity?" And John Shire said, "Yes, you will." And of course, very soon into the season, he moved into the starting lineup and became what he was. But we mentioned in the NBA, it's not always a point guard always initiating the offense. It's not always the guy, the main scorer getting the ball early. And sometimes these guys run offenses and have sets that they like to run. So I'm interested to see how far he goes or how early he goes because of the fact that I think that he would be a great guy for that second unit on an NBA team, right? That second five that comes in and he could play the one, the two, and the three and can defend anybody because of how strong he is. And I think in the NBA, that is a popular thing that NBA GMs aren't necessarily pressed to figure out a solution to, if that makes sense. So I'm anxious to hear what you have to say about that because I think, again, I think we both agree that Sion James could land on the Hawks, Pistons, and we would be super happy with that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I wonder how GMs are thinking about a guy like Sion James, who, because of the fact they're looking for the new shiny piece of candy, the commodity that's been on the shelf for a couple years is something that they're just not thinking about.
So first of all, you were talking about, oh, do you take an experienced guy versus a younger guy? I'm going to make a prediction right now, and we're going to see. This may be insane. I don't think you're going to see a single freshman or sophomore drafted in the second round. Uh,
That's a very hot take, only because of how deep this class is. And you kind of mentioned the Derek Queen situation. Derek Queen he could be number 3, he could be number 13. I think there's going to be some of those guys who fall out of
I
the
don't think
first round.
so. I'm telling you, this is just my gut. I don't think you're going to see a single freshman. Maybe, maybe one or two of them will last to like 31, 32, the first few picks the second round. Once you get to about 35, 30, here's my thing 35 to 59, because there are only 59 picks. The Knicks lost their second round pick. From 35 to 59, you will not see a freshman or sophomore drafted. You'll see internationals, juniors, and seniors. That's just my projection.
I would
But
say go down to 40. So I'll make that prediction. 40 and below. But
you're tagging on to me, man. This is my bold pick.
I mean, you made it. But I do think there's going to be a couple that drop in because that's just how it works every draft.
We'll see. We'll see. I want to talk about Sion James for a moment. Everyone knows how much I love this guy. I've been the guy who's been singing his praises since the moment he committed to Duke, more so than perhaps anyone else out there. He is an absolute wall on defense. His physicality at the point of attack was a weapon for Duke this year. He is an elite communicator. He has an understanding of the geometry of the floor. He has an innate sense of where he needs to be on defense. These are all super, super valuable skills. But in the NBA, he's not going to be guarding 6'1" and 6'2" string bean guards like he was a lot of the time at Duke. NBA point guards, 6'5", they're Sion's size already. Dudes are just a lot bigger at the next level, and Sion's physical advantages are going to be a lot smaller than they were in college. Now, it's worth noting he did have some trouble with some smaller guards. The bulk and the strength on his frame make him a little less quick in his hips. Like his ability to turn his hips is a not that it's an issue, but he's just not as quick about it as some other guys who aren't quite as bulked up. And that could be an issue guarding point guards. I think even though Sion's going to be capable of switching, all over the floor in the NBA, I think he's mostly going to be guarding twos and threes, not ones and not fours. And remember, one of the things he would do at Duke is Duke could switch him all the way down to a four. Look, again, sometimes you could switch him all the way down to a five, and he was perfectly fine. That's not going to fly in the NBA. So, it's just going to be very different from what he did when he was at Duke. And I really worry, Donald.
Real quick, Jason,
Go ahead.
on
Go
that,
ahead. Yeah.
I think the one thing that could be a boost to him is the fact that he played on the tallest team in the country, where he was one of the shortest
Yeah.
guys on the team at 6'5", right? So in practice every day, he was going up against NBA quality guys who were taller than him, as strong as him, and where you said he was able to learn how to maximize his strength against bigger guys.
That's a great point. Yeah. 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 Look, I worry. I worry about his ability to contribute on offense in the NBA. He's going to have to knock down open threes to get into an NBA rotation. He's going to have to be a 3 and D guy. You can't just be a D guy. And I'm I'm unsure. I haven't seen any evidence that he's going to be someone who can ever take a three off the dribble. I read someplace that he only made 1 out of 11 pull up threes this past season at Duke, and he made very very few of them also when he was at Tulane. His perimeter jumper has good mechanics on it, but it's kind of slow, and he brings the ball a little bit lower in the pocket than is ideal. So he needs a little bit of space to be open, and that's why he doesn't take many and he doesn't make many pull up threes. And that's going to be an issue for NBA teams. How much of that is a barrier to him getting rotation minutes? I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, he's a great decision maker with the ball in his hands. He's not going to make mistakes and turn the ball over, but he's not super creative. He's not going to pass guys open. It's not, I don't think I don't see Sion playing point guard in the NBA the way he did at Duke. And then the last thing about him I would say is I didn't even know this until I was reading a little bit about, some of the scouting on him for the NBA draft. Donald, he's young. He skipped third grade when he was, in elementary school and sort of never made up for it later on. So he's only 22 years old, even though he played 5 years of college basketball. Like guys like Caleb Love, Jameer Watkins, who are both in this draft class with him, are like a year and a half older than he is.
Mm-hmm.
They are way older than him. And that at least gives Sion, believe me, one of the things NBA teams are looking at is how old are you and do you have room to grow? And Sion, even though he is a fifth-year senior with a ton of college experience, I mean, like he has like as many games started as he's like, top 5, top 10 all time in terms of games started across NCAA basketball, because he started from day one at Tulane. He's still 22, and maybe that helps him out with some NBA teams scouting him. The big question is going to be, does he get taken high enough to get a guaranteed contract, or is he in a two-way deal? And the difference in those two contracts is about $700,000.
I think also one thing I'll be curious to see is he in a position where he has to play on the summer league to make it happen? Because I'd bet on him on that. I mean, if you think about Jason, we talked about this before the draft combine, the fact that, oh, you're going to put Sion James in there and see how he does. Bet in the ranch on him performing and excelling and impressing. And guess what? He
Yeah.
did. And so I think that's the thing, is that competition that he has in him, the ability to know what he needs to do to outwork the other guy and move up the ranks. That is going to be key to an NBA team, especially, and I think also accepting your role and knowing that the role can change through hard work. I think that part is impressive. And I think teams, hopefully NBA GMs, will start to look at that more with the changing landscape of the wide body of players that are available in particular drafts, not just this one, but down the line. And I think Sion James fits into that category of a guy that an NBA GM would love to get and prove everybody right. Like, oh, see, y'all were sleeping on this guy, and now he's running my second unit, and we didn't think he was going to be a two-way player when we drafted him, but he worked his way into that particular conversation. So I'm really hoping for that for him. Jason, as we did for Jay Billis, we are going to do an over under. And before I give the number, obviously the number is 45, but I want to list where some of the other people have listed Sion James, the ones that have done full mock drafts over the last couple of days. ESPN has him going 52 to the Suns. The Athletic has him going 47th to the Bucks. Yahoo Sports on his there was 46 to the Magic. Bleacher Report has him number 57 also to the Magic, and Net Scouts has him going 48th to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Our over under. Go ahead.
Wait. I think Sam Bassini of the Athletic has him 38.
This is as of yesterday, so it could have changed in the past 24 hours when I did that. So 40, but generally again, 52nd, 47th, 46th, 57th, 48 is what I saw in the last 24 hours. So yeah, your miles may vary with that. Our over under, as you know, Jason, is set at 45. So I ask you, will Sion James go 1 to 45 or will he go below 46?
I love Sion. I think he goes outside of the top 45. I think he gets a two-way contract. I don't think he gets a full NBA contract, although he could certainly play his way into one. I think he'll outperform his draft spot, but I think NBA teams are going to look and see a guy who was not called upon to score very much at all at Duke, and they're going to be concerned whether he can provide enough offense to make him a viable player for them, even as a 3-and-D specialist. I'd love to be wrong. I hope that I am wrong, but if I put on my NBA GM hat, I think that I'm looking at Sion in the late 40s, not the early 40s.
Yeah, I agree. I look at him as that 46 to 50 when I saw Magic Bucks Cavs. I think that's a interesting trio because I think each of them are especially the Bucks could be in a position where a Sion James can come in and really thrive because they could have a lot of turnover this summer if Giannis gets traded. So I'm looking at that and saying that's 47, so that's under 45. I'm going to go under, but I think we both agree that he should be drafted and
Is
that he
that
will be
under or
drafted.
over? Under's usually bad. Over's I don't know.
Well, our over, so we'll say over. I'm saying over is 1 through 45. Under is
Yeah,
46
I
above.
get it.
We're
I
both
get it.
going under. We will use that. We will use that for all our other over unders as well. But I think both of us have him going 46 to 50. But we think he's going to get drafted, and hopefully he will do so. I think, Jason, we can leave it there on this episode of the Duke Basketball Roundup. Again, we will be back very soon to preview the other 4 remaining players who are
Tyrese
eligible for
Proctor
draft.
up next, Donald.
Tyrese Proctor is up next. So if you guys want to do some research on Tyrese Proctor and give us your thoughts, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget, we have a survey that you can fill out with a bunch of questions that range from who your favorite Duke basketball player or team is to some general comments about NIL and John Shire and the state of the program. tinyurl.com/Duke Roundup. That's where you can go to fill that survey out. We've had over 1,100 surveys so far, and we want to get more so that we can give you basically what the Duke fan base is thinking about, and you can tell us how we're doing. So he's Jason. I'm Donald. For Sion James, for Jay Billis, this is the Duke Band. We are playing them out and taking them home.